Welcome. This is the Punk CX podcast. My name is Adrian Swinscoe, and I'm an advisor, best-selling author, Forbes contributor, and general explorer of the service and experience space. The thing I'm really interested in is how do we create organizations that produce better outcomes for both their customers and their people. This podcast has been running since January 2011, and so we have a big archive to explore. Check out the archive at adrianswinscoe.com. That's enough from me. Let's get into the interview. So welcome to the next edition of the Punk CX podcast. With me today, I have Nadia Ness, who is the Global Transformation Leader for Customer Support at IKEA, no less. Hi, Nadia. How are you doing?
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm good. How are you?
Very well. Now, first of all, first things first, I just wanted to say it is lovely to have a bit of a Scottish brogue on the podcast. Doesn't happen very often, but it's lovely to have a Scottish brogue on the podcast. So get that out of the way so people can relax into kind of the sound of your voice as we're kind of talking, which is brilliant. But Nadia, for the benefit of our listeners and the folks that will read some of the highlights and things that we make on the back of the podcast, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and also the work that you do?
Sure. And also just to say, I work in a global team, so it's always nice to have a meeting where there's another Scottish accent as well. I don't take it for granted. Hi to your listeners. I'm Nadia. As you said, I'm currently at IKEA leading our global customer support transformation program. Over my career, I have worked in different industries, mostly in either customer experience, digital strategy, and then most recently leading a couple of large-scale transformations that comprise new technology with new customer tools and propositions and a big people change element as part of that as well.
Awesome. Now, so we met at a recent ITSX event, so a big shout out to them. That was kind of held, it was last month at time of recording. And that took place in Edinburgh at Dynamic Earth, which was a kind of a cool place to kind of have it in the lee of kind of Arthur's Seat actually in Holyrood Park, if you want to look it up on the map. And you were talking about transforming IKEA's customer support. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't make that talk, but we bumped into each other, or rather, I kind of collared you in the kind of in the coffee break. Went hello, and then we had a chat. So. And I was really wanted to hear your story, so I got in touch and asked you, and you said yay to the podcast, which was so. Thank you very much, and thank you to the comms people at IKEA for letting kind of Nadia kind of come and talk to me today. So big shout out to them. So can you give us a bit of an intro to IKEA and the sort of the why and the vision for your transformation, just to set the scene, as it were?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I hope that your listeners have heard of IKEA before or have visited an IKEA store. And I was really pleased when I asked that question at the start of my presentation that everyone in the room's hands went up. So just in case you don't know who IKEA are, we are a retailer that exists to improve the lives of the many people. We've been in business for around about 80 years, and you are probably familiar with our stores, or the big blue boxes, as some people affectionately call them, where you wander through, you sit on a new sofa, maybe you pick up some cushions in the market hall, and if you're anything like me, about 50 candles that you don't need, you get your meatballs and you go home feeling inspired for, all the ways that you're going to redecorate your house. And we know that customers love that experience. And we've really, we get a lot of kudos for the way that we've designed our stores, and it feels really special to visit an IKEA. But then it's fair to say that over time, if we look in the mirror, we probably lost track of the fact that the world was evolving round about us in terms of remote customer expectations. So what happens when you leave one of our stores and you need support, you want inspiration, you want guidance? And there were some proof points that were telling us that. So we had, our customer support co-workers, and we have around 10,000 people that are working in customer support around the world. And in their satisfaction surveys and in listening posts, they were telling us that they felt like they could use their skills in a better way, but they didn't have the right investment in clear accountability, processes that empowered them, systems that would allow them to do their job effectively.
Mm-hmm.
We also, from looking at our customer surveys, we knew that we weren't at the level that we wanted to be or the level that our customers expect from us. And then also from the perspective of industry benchmarking, looking at the cost of our customer support was just growing exponentially just with firefighting. There were no economies of scale because we didn't have a blueprint for how customer support would work. So every country had their own way of doing things.
Right.
And all of those things really were combining with, this customer support offering that didn't match the brand and our culture and our purpose of being accessible for many people. So that was kind of the catalyst for why we started this huge transformation program.
Right. I mean, crumbs, 10,000 people. I mean, it's like, wow, that's way bigger than I would have thought it was. But you're right. I mean, it's like if there's no blueprint, then people go off and just respond to the demand in the ways that they've they know and stuff. But like, I guess, how have you gone about kind of doing that? And I guess it's like there is this digital sort of like thing. It's like, because IKEA has been very much a almost like I wouldn't call it a big box retailer, but they're in big boxes, right? And it's like a self-service sort of thing. But then there's the digital aspect of it with kind of like ordering and delivery and fulfillment and support and all this sort of like stuff. I mean, I guess, what have you done? Tell me a little bit about kind of how you've built out that digital capability, like particularly around the self-service kind of function and helping customers help themselves, because that's kind of a key part of it, right?
Yeah, totally. And also, it's a key part of the IKEA experience. You build your own furniture when you get home. So,
Duh.
there's, yeah, it's part of our DNA that customers are empowered to be able to do things for themselves. And I would say an important part of context is that we had e-commerce before we had really invested in the remote customer support aspect of things. So there were a couple of things that we looked at in terms of digital, and we've always been very clear through this transformation that our co-workers, our employees, still play a really important part in our customer support offerings. So it's not that the purpose of this transformation has been to not have our people at the heart of still engaging with customers. But there are different digital tools that we can use. So the first thing is that we realized from doing a lot of listening to our customers, looking at what was out there in the market, was there are transactional things that customers want to be able to do for themselves. So where we had a local example or a local solution in one of our countries, at IKEA we call it stealing with pride, but basically, how do we take that, scale it up and make it fit for purpose so that every market can enjoy the benefits of that tool. And if we didn't have that, then we would build it with a product team. So simple things that you would expect from any retailer, like being able to change your order, change your delivery date, cancel your order, being able to do things like if your child lost their favourite toy while we were wandering around the market hall, being able to track that and get it back without having to have that frantic run back around the whole store to see if you can pick up the toy. Then we started building more complex digital solutions. So, for example, if you wanted to buy a new wardrobe and understand what that might look like in your space, having virtual planners that are easy for customers to use where they can mock up a whole room. And then using digital then to merge the experience of total self-serve and our amazing co-workers by then doing things like having live shopping events, so embedding the technology where you can be inspired one-to-many video, and then also things like planning and selling kitchens over video, using more and more complex planning tools to allow customers to do that without having to visit their local store if that's what they choose to do.
Right. No, so I think that's really interesting. What I think is really fascinating, though, is that the first thing that you did, and this is probably runs counter to many transformation efforts, is that so you had these 10,000 colleagues that were working in support in numerous different operations around the world, and they were all responding in their own way, building their own sort of things in order to kind of to respond to customer demand. And they've built their own little things. And so rather than actually going, we're going to start from scratch, you actually went out and toured and went, oh, we like that, we like that, we like that, we like that, we like it. And it's a bit like, oh, it's so the innovation will take place anyway. The creativity takes place anyway, because it's all kind of people responding in their own ways. But actually, rather than having to reinvent things, you've gone, oh, cherry pick all these different things and fit it into a bigger plan and then build on top of that. And I think that's really clever, because actually, and really, it feels to me quite unusual, because a lot of the times transformation seems to be driven from the center and then pushed out, rather than going out and then pulling back and then sort of scaling from the center. And so I think that's a really, really interesting thing. So like, how did you go about doing that? Finding those little pockets of going, oh, there's the needle in the haystack over there. We need to find that needle and then turn it into this big, humongous nail.
Yeah, I mean, good question. And, you know, of course, there's a balance where we chose things from the markets that already existed, and then we had to invest in some areas because we didn't have something. But I think the thing that for me has made this transformation feel so special to be a part of is the partnership that we have with each of the markets. So I'm really proud of the fact that our transformation team is diverse. We've deliberately recruited people from a number of different countries, with backgrounds working either in their local market. Some people have worked at IKEA for 20, 30 years, so they have all of this rich history. They know where these things are. Then we recruited people that had never worked at IKEA before and had fresh eyes and expertise. So I think the thing that's contributed to our success is firstly having a diverse team that then just sparks creativity, because you have all these different life experiences, points of view, reference points, and they all come together with their own network and connections. And then the other thing is just working with the countries as equals. So we had a global team, but we also had a project team in every country, and they're the experts. I mean, I think we've been really humble about the fact that the people that are doing this day in, day out in local markets see and hear things that in a global team you have to work harder to be closer to our customers. And so taking that insight and doing something meaningful with it, and then, you know, having to find the balance between being locally relevant, but also having a global strategy that aligns and enhances the support that we offer. So it's not been easy, but we talk about our customer support community a lot, and it genuinely has been a community from all over the world that has been part of this movement.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's like you're making people stars of their own story as well, which is brilliant. But if you've done all that, and so as you say, you've identified some really kind of great practice from different markets, and you've kind of pieced that together, and you've scaled it, and then you've built new things on top, and used more advanced sort of technology, so to allow people to do kind of almost like live shopping, different planning sort of things, like that's applicable to their own home, which will be sort of like AR, VR type of stuff. But also other sort of like, I guess, like CAD-like tools for planning and stuff if you're doing kitchens and wardrobes and planning bedrooms and things. But you put all that together and you go, yeah, what's the kind of like, how has that kind of changed? What impact has it had, I guess, on the overall sort of experience? And also like, what's the revenue impact it's had? What's the business kind of impact it's had? Because it's like the engagement model has changed. You're moving from just purely kind of retail, like in real life kind of type of retail with a bit of e-commerce, to some virtual stuff and enhanced stuff, and it's sort of expanding all sorts of different ways. So I guess what's been the revenue impact and all of that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think that quite often when people discuss like customer experience, it's almost that customer experience and commerciality are at loggerheads with each other, and that's just not true. So the approach that we've taken is that we see that our customer support is not anymore a cost center. So it's not something that the business has to do. just at the lowest cost to serve possible, but actually it's something that creates value streams for the organization. And that's the mindset shift that we've really been focusing on more broadly outside of customer support at IKEA.
Mm-hmm.
There are two kind of commercial ways that we've tracked the success of the transformation, as well as tracking things like, we call it happy customer score, but essentially customer satisfaction and co-worker satisfaction. We have looked at the cost efficiency that we have managed to save by the nature of making ourselves more efficient, not having over 200 local systems that are all doing slightly different versions of the same thing. We are talking tens of millions of cost efficiency savings, but also significant growth in terms of sales that we now meet our customers, because we're selling to them remotely, or we're helping them plan kitchens, wardrobes, interior design in a way that we weren't before, when customer support was seen as basically a complaints and query channel.
Mm-hmm. And you said that moving away from seeing customer support as a cost center to like value center, or let's not call it profit center, like a value center, because it's a more all-encompassing. I wonder if you can tell me a little bit about how did that happen? I mean, is it like a bit of a chicken and egg or cart and horse sort of thing? Do you have to kind of make the case, do the thing, generate the outcomes, and go, oh, we need to look at this as a value center now because it's not value, not just about cost, about value? Or do you actually have to have that philosophical discussion first, and then that enables the program, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, good question. So I think a bit of both. So we started with a lot of stakeholder input into the transformation. So actually, before we settled on this is the scope, this is what we'll do, we tried to get really far and wide spectrum of what do people around the business think, where might the sticking points be, what would the ideal scenario be for different people in the organization when we talk about customer support. And I think that then helped us to craft a compelling case for change that really resonated with people. I think we've been blessed to have some really amazing senior leaders who've been sponsoring this program and have really actively advocated for this change. And that's made a huge difference. But also we've had ambassadors on the front line. So I think having those agents of change at all levels of the organization has helped us to push that. And then we have really over-indexed on change management through this transformation. And I think it's something that can be easy to cut corners on when you are up against the wall, because you're trying to deliver as much as possible, as quickly as possible. But having, constant storytelling content that's going out, having, really clear benefit realization of this is what we've done so far, having those proof points. So having pilots, pivoting, or course correcting as and when maybe we didn't see the results initially that we wanted, to actually demonstrating that we've listened to feedback from pilots as well, and then scaling that up and planning the program in a large scale agile way so that we could concurrently deliver a number of projects at the same time, is how we went about it.
And I guess that kind of as part of that, it's kind of like, because what you were saying is like, it's actually, there's a lot of moving parts all at the same time, and you're constantly communicating it and kind of managing expectations and telling stories and telling people about kind of what's going on and what's planned and all these different things. But you also kind of like, I know you also kind of mentioned in the sort of the broader story that like transformation is just not a one and done type of thing. It's a continuous kind of improvement. And you've developed this concept called like, there's a hub concept that's in there that's around about driving innovation, but continual innovation and also continual progress and improvement. Tell me about that gyroscopic sort of effect that you've tried to, that I guess has possibly come from that hub.
Yeah, and I mean, again, what better way to demonstrate that you're a value centre for the rest of the organisation than to be this unit that is able to test these concepts, roll them out quickly, adapt them, and then package them up and share them back with the rest of the company. So we have tested initiatives both from a people perspective, because also we're proud to have partnered with our internal Future of Work team, where we look at how do we attract more talent talent, from different backgrounds? How do we become an even more accessible employer? So, looking at things like how do we harness different working locations to be more accessible to different types of people, or outside of your traditional customer support working hours that, might be more beneficial if you have caring responsibilities or if you're a student. So, we've really tried to test these people concepts and roll them out. But then also we've looked at innovation in the sense of, using new technology, trialing different capabilities, working sometimes with partners where we don't have the internal competence to, or really strength to be able to do that, and learning from what's round about us. So we now have a permanent remote experience design team that's been set up amongst other centres of expertise that will really be focused on taking all of these concepts that we've been incubating in the transformation and now being able to continually test and to roll these things out over time, but also with the right specialism or the right capability within the broader remote customer support team to be able to continue to innovate.
Awesome. And so now I know that you're sort of at the end of this phase of the transformation, and that phase has been like what, 3 years in the offing.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about what have you actually, so sounds slightly incredulous, what have you actually achieved?
Yeah.
You're like going, actually, it's like kind of like change that. It's like, so what have you been able to achieve over the last kind of 3 years?
Yeah, it's like, show me the receipts. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like going, prove it.
I feel like I'm back at school. So we have, just on a pure kind of deployment basis, we have deployed around about 30 different projects. So when we talk about customer support transformation, it's an umbrella for multiple different projects that maybe in another organization would be a program in its own right. And that has been everything from, self-service tools, new digital systems for their co-workers, new ways of meeting our customers, investment in skills and development, and also some of the more innovative pilots that we'd spoken about as well. But then in terms of results, so we've seen our happy customer score, which is like our customer satisfaction, go up by 22 points since we started. So
nice.
I mean, and that continues to climb, and we're really proud of that. Every time we get the latest happy customer score result in, I mean, people are celebrating over Teams. It's a really good feeling. The other one that we are very proud of is our co-worker engagement, or like employee engagement score. And for our customer support population, that's gone up by 5 points and is now on par with our co-workers who are in our stores. So now what that shows us is that our customer support teams are feeling as valued as their counterparts who are meeting our customers physically.
Excellent. So it's like, because what can often happen is that customer service or customer support can sometimes feel like the forgotten team in most organizations, and actually bringing them up to kind of parity, kind of like and achieving the same levels of engagement means that they are part of the bigger kind of team, and they are seen as being important and playing doing a difficult job, and sometimes a kind of a complex job, and quite a highly pressurized kind of job, but to feel that they're included and engaged and supported and enabled and all these different sort of things and invested in is going to be a great thing. So that's great to hear. Right. So it's been 3 years. So if somebody else is going, say, along their own kind of journey, well, they might be starting it, they might be halfway through it or whatever. I mean, what would be the big, I guess, macro key learnings that you would have, or that top tips that you would kind of share with others about, from your own perspective, about kind of what you've kind of like picked up along this journey?
Sure. So I think some of them I've mentioned, so I don't want to go into too much detail again, but are you surrounded by a diverse team that are actually going to be set up to challenge each other? Are they going to come up with new ideas and have the space to be creative? Are you investing in change management and storytelling and doing it from start to end? Because I think that you can deliver things technically, you can make a system go live, you can change a process, but if people don't feel like they, as you said, like they own that change, then it's never going to be as successful. And it's not something you can do once, and it's not something you can do every 6 months at a roadshow. It has to be always on, like, and always valued. I think some of the other learnings that we've had have been creating this environment of psychological safety. So really creating an atmosphere where our SMEs who are working on the transformation or are the receivers of some of the items of the transformation feel like they can speak up if something isn't going to plan. So not just telling the good news of it's all on track, we're going to hit all of our dates, but actually having mechanisms in place where people feel like they can raise concerns, raise feedback, and that is listened to and valued and respected. And then probably the last one is like benefit realization. So every organization that I've worked in, has either a short memory or just things change in the landscape round about you. And you have to be prepared to constantly justify or explain the benefits that the transformation is bringing to the organization, and, have clear entry and exit criteria, and then communicate that proactively. So I would say don't underestimate that you need to do a bit of PR work when something genuinely is going well, because I think that will unlock your next round of funding. It will keep people on track when transformation can sometimes be slow to deliver, and you need people to still feel motivated to get to that end point, even if it's 20 months away.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and so yeah, thank you for that. I mean, I think that also that what's interesting to me as well is that you've gone through this because I remember you telling me that, like, going, I took on this global role and I expected like I was flying around the world and doing all these different things, and then global became very kind of like virtual, kind of globally virtual, is it, rather than actually globally face to face sort of thing, because the pandemic happened, lockdown happened, and this and the challenge took on a different nature, I guess. And I think the thing that struck me over the last kind of few years is how the nature of management and leadership has kind of changed and had to adapt to sort of new, obvious remote challenges and hybrid challenges, and also new operating kind of models. I mean, what have you learned, or how have you had as a leader in this in a global role had to adapt to better support and enable kind of your team?
Yeah, I mean, this job has been a huge learning curve for me, because, as you said, like, I got the job. In fact, my first week in the job was the week before Scotland went back into lockdown. So I think I had just enough time to pick up my laptop from my local IKEA store, and that was it. And then I was stuck in the house for the second time. So I had not mentally prepared for the fact that I was going to be leading this huge remote team virtually, and also a team that I'd never met in real life before. And a lot of the things I had in my backpack in terms of leadership from my last jobs just might not apply. So, some of the things that I think I've had to build into my team's rituals are things like strategic recovery. So, adapting to the fact that people were facing higher levels of stress, because living through a pandemic is a stressful thing. Like, that people also, had the tendency to just sit at their laptops all the time because we were stuck in our houses with nothing else to do, and almost went into this phase of hyper productivity. So building in strategic recovery so that people were given permission to take that time to clear their brain, to go outside for your walk in a bubble of two, or whatever that might be. And then I think I over the past couple of years have been researching more and more into servant leadership. And I manage a team, as I said, all from different countries, all with loads of life experience. And I have to be humble to the fact that my way is not the best way, and it's not my job to dictate everything, but actually it's my responsibility as a leader to enable them to be at their best, and then looking for creative ways for having those conversations virtually. And then how do you then bring this team that actually are quite comfortable with each other on a laptop screen, and we've all seen each other's kids and pets and, partners walking in and walking back out the room by mistake. But then how do you build those bonds in real life again when everyone's feeling a bit nervous about social interaction? So I think there's been this just constant learning curve, which I have loved, of leading in a different way and focusing so much more on the emotional side of leadership than maybe the practical, tangible, are we going to hit this date or not?
Awesome. No, that's great. So I just want to kind of like, before I ask you some to sort of like wrap up or questions at the end, I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing the story of that. I mean, is there, before we sort of move on, is there anything that you'd like to add or highlight that we sort of missed out?
That's a good question. I hope that if you are a listener of this podcast and you have interacted with our customer support a couple of years ago and now, I hope that you see the impact of all of the things that we've been working on. We co-opted a customer panel in this transformation for 6 months. So we've actually had customers from all around the world co-creating the transformation, testing, giving us really honest feedback, which is what we needed. So just to say that, we continue to evolve. This is so important for us. It's not that the transformation is over, and that means that there's no investment in customer support anymore. But the best feedback that we'll get is our customers telling us that we're doing a good job and we're exceeding their expectations.
Awesome. Yeah, that's brilliant. And anybody that has maybe shopped at IKEA or has maybe not shopped at IKEA for a while and maybe didn't have the best experience maybe a few years ago, give them a go again, because they've done a lot of work. They've been in the gym, kind of working out, and now they're kind of like getting much fitter and healthier, which is great, and all down to Nadia and her team, which is splendid. So Nadia, if somebody else is also going through this, or just like generally think about this, because we've talked about quite a lot of stuff, but if you were to say, I should kind of name this section of it sort of guest says or Nadia says ... Like, what would be your best advice to someone listening in that wants to improve their customer and or sort of employee experience? If it says like Nadia says, do this one thing, what would it be?
Yeah, I think you get the most if you spend most of your time listening to what those teams are actually telling you. So like, I think you have to get as much input as possible. So don't just look at an Excel spreadsheet of the verbatim from your customer or your coworker like satisfaction survey or your customer satisfaction survey. Like, how close are you? Because normally the people that are deciding on the transformation programs are not always the closest. So when was the last time that you spent time in your frontline customer support operation? When was the last time that you did listening groups with, the people that work there day in, day out? When was the last time that you used it yourself? Like, I think that you have to start from a place of listening, or otherwise you'll make the changes that you perceive to be the right ones, but not necessarily the ones that will make a difference.
Awesome. And I think that I would add to that is like, I mean, I hear that sort of advice kind of given by lots of different people that I have on the podcast. And one of the challenges I also kind of know that people face in corporate life is sometimes it's like two things. One is doing that can sometimes feel like you're going against the grain or the cultural grain because it's not the done thing.
Yeah.
So first of all, you have to get over that and just kind of go against the grain, because you're going to seeking out the true and real kind of insight. And the second thing, they also complain about not having the time. But that's the imperative. You've got to make the time, because you have to understand that this is important. It's valuable. It's kind of almost, it's not important. It's crucial. It's essential. And you have to make the time to just go and do it. And so that's the thought I would add on to that. It's like going, yeah, it's probably going to be hard in some situations to do, but make the time, put in the effort, because it's absolutely worth it.
Yeah, totally. And I think it goes back to the psychological safety point that I made
Right.
earlier, that if you're a leader and you are showing up and listening and you're walking the talk, and I don't just mean doing it once, but like if it's a regular feature in your calendar where that time is blocked out and it's sacrosanct, then that also contributes to a culture of, I genuinely am listening. I'm not doing it to tick a box. I want you to tell me the honest truth. I'll be back again in a couple of months to see how you're getting on. Like, and so I find the excuse of I don't have time as an excuse. I don't know. For me personally, I think that's a poor excuse to make. I think that you'll find the time if it's important to you, and it might feel a bit uncomfortable, and that's okay too.
Oh, and also, I would say it's guaranteed to feel uncomfortable the first time you do it. And you're almost guaranteed to not get the feedback that you'd, or the richness of the depth of the feedback that you would like the first time you do it, because ultimately you've got to show up and keep showing up because you have to build that trust that people can like know that you can like, you say, you matter. I'm here to listen. I'm going to be back to check in with you. And it's about building those bridges and those connections. So people are then, they trust that this matters and you're going to show up and keep showing up. So therefore they're going to be increasingly open kind of with you.
Yeah, totally. And you also have to demonstrate, what have you done with the feedback? Like, what did you hear the last time you were there, or what have you heard at the end of the listening post, or whatever that might be? Because otherwise, if people keep giving you feedback and they don't feel like you're listening, why should they bother? So yeah, I would say to anyone, like, also don't wait for permission to go and listen to your customers or to go and listen to your frontline teams. Like, if you are working in a customer experience type role, what else is more important?
Right. She says, dropping the mic, walking
just
off.
end the podcast there.
Yeah, like, there you go. There's your punk piece of advice. Right. But talking about punk, actually, before we go, at the end of all these podcasts, I've been asking people a couple of different questions to relate to the punk books that I've kind of published. And the first one is related to the Punk CX book. And it says, what 1 or 2 words would you use to describe a more punk approach to customer experience?
So linking to what I last said, like brave, like I think is the first one. You have to take some brave, bold moves, like away from maybe the status quo in order to improve things for the future or to make them exciting. And then disruptive is the other one, I would say. So just because you've been doing something forever doesn't mean you have to do it forever.
Right. So disruptive, I can tell you, I'm looking at my list and I've got nearly 180 of them now. So disruptive, already taken, can't have that one. Bold, already taken, but surprisingly, brave is not on the list. So she shoots, she scores. It's a bit like a pointless thing. This is a random sort of quiz sort of like reference where you're like going, and brave is the one that's the pointless one. So you got the 1 out of 3. That's all you need to do,
Great.
which is brilliant. So that's on the list. Fantastic. And so the second question is about Punk XL and about this idea about experienced leadership. And who do you think sort of like, what company or brand or organization do you think is an experienced leader? Like, who's setting the bar that's got this, taking a bit more of a connected, integrated, systemic, holistic sort of view on experience, as it were? Who's setting the bar? Who do you look to as going, yeah, I think they're doing all right?
So I'm going to answer this as a customer. So there are a couple of different brands that I really admire aspects of their customer experience or their customer service. But I think the brand for me, and again, speaking from a customer perspective, is Bloom and Wild, who I think get it the most right most of the time. And the reason that I think that is because I do see them doing things differently to other companies, and they are so often the first ones to do it. So firstly, they have a website and an app that is really easy to navigate. They send me helpful reminders like, hey, you sent your best friend flowers almost a year ago. Is it her birthday? And she's deleted her Facebook. So you might want a reminder that she is actually going to turn, whatever age tomorrow. So I find that really helpful without it being intrusive.
Okay.
I also, they have led on things like they were the first ones to do the Mother's Day opt-out, but they did it in a very genuine and authentic way. Now I get spammed by probably like 50 different companies that didn't get in touch with me all through the year, but now suddenly want me to know or want me to say if I want to opt out of Mother's Day. And then again, Bloom and Wild, I think this year I saw that they partnered with Tommy's, who are the baby loss charity. And the flowers that they sold for Mother's Day, a portion of that I think went to donate to Tommy's, which is a really important cause. And again, I just thought that was so genuine to take, rather than just saying, oh, we'll do the same thing we've done every year. Actually, how can we take something that might be painful for some people and give some money to good and put our money where our mouth is? So, and also again, from personal experience, if something goes wrong, they are so quick at solving it. So I've used them as, pretty much the only company that I buy flowers from for the past couple of years, because as a customer, they are just so easy and nice to interact with. And I can see that they genuinely are listening to customer feedback and doing things in an authentic way rather than just because everyone else is doing it.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a good name to add to the list. Now, one final thing before we go is, because I don't know if you're like me, but I wake up in the morning and I look at the news and I have a cup of coffee in hand and it feels like endless doom scrolling, as everything seems to be going to hell in a handbasket. But we've got to stay positive. So therefore, with that in mind, I've been asking people at the end of this kind of podcast to share with me a good news story, or to tell me the most interesting, positive, or exciting thing they've seen in the last week. And so what would that be, Nadia?
Yeah, so actually the thing that has made me most excited this week was I was at a Women in Tech conference, and it's not often that you have so many women who are working in tech in the same room. Like that's a pretty uncommon thing, maybe there's like one or two of you, although I have to say, working at IKEA, we have a really great gender diversity and gender balance in leadership. But, at conferences and things, especially around technology. And I just left feeling so inspired that there are all these women that are focusing on how do we get more girls, really early on in their lives, like interested in STEM careers, and how can we, inspire more of like Gen Z and Gen Alpha to see that tech is for everyone. And I just felt really uplifted at the end of that day. So, it wasn't in the news, but I just felt like there's hope and there's all these women that are trying to encourage other women to have, a broader spectrum of careers at their fingertips if they want it. So
fantastic. I love it. What a great thing. And so that's it. That's all I have. And so what I want to say is, first of all, congratulations on the success that you've had with the transformation program, and thank you. It was a delight to meet you at the ITSX event. Again, big shout out to them. I'm going to let them know that you've had you on the podcast, and then they'll maybe listen in. But also thank you for sharing your time and your insights and your experience with us. That's been awesome.
Thank you. No, thanks for having me. It was really nice to see you again.
Wow, what a great interview. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. Find out more about me and the work that I do at adrianswinscoe.com. Do leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And if you have any comments, feedback, or questions about the podcast, then feel free to send me a message to podcast@adrianswinscoe.com. Do tune in again. Thanks very much.